trees for an hour. What could be more fun than that? So let me share my screen. See if this will work.
Yep.
Let's see. I can't see. You able to see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. Fantastic. So I just thought I would start out with a little bit of stuff. I mean, everything that I find interesting about San Francisco's trees, I put on my website, sftrees.com. So I thought I'd just start out by letting everyone know about a few things that are interesting to me and that may or may not be widely known. So off this main page, there are a bunch of links. There's a page about me and my driver's license or my license plate. If you see this license plate around town, say hello, that's me. There's a page about my book, Trees of San Francisco. There, I've got a link to the top 10. I'm actually starting to expand that. I found some additional trees that I just thought were incredible. So I'm going to make it into a top 20 list where I just kind of go in a reverse order, 10, 9, 8. Some people will probably recognize some of these trees, the eucalyptus trees on Octavia. My personal top 10 in San Francisco.
Great.
And let's see what else. I've got a walking tour of Salesforce Park, which I think is the second best collection of trees in the city outside of the Botanical Garden. Amazing collection of trees that were curated by the designers, but they're not labeled. So this is a way you can take your phone to Salesforce Park and walk around the loop and find out what's there. Let's go over to the landmark trees link. This is the thing I think that I most want to get out to the group, because if we've got 100 people on this call who care enough about trees to log into this event, then they should be pretty excited about this. So for a long time, I've kept a list of what I consider the best of each species of tree in San Francisco. And you can see it's a really long list, but it's also hard to use. I mean, how can you easily access that as you go around the city? So I was able to get some functionality that if you click on the link, you click on the map off of the landmark trees link, you're taken to a map of the city where the dots represent the trees. And so now for the first time, you can, no matter where you are in San Francisco, if you have your smartphone with you, you can go to sftrees.com, click on this landmark trees link and click on the map. And if you're in Noe Valley, you will see that there are like 10 cool trees very close to you, and you can bike or walk or drive to them. Anywhere in the city, you'll always have, I actually use this all the time. If I'm got 10 minutes of downtime and I happen to be in Bernal Heights and I want to see some trees, I don't remember where they are either. So I click on the map, and you've got 10 minutes of tree fun. So that, let's see, let's get back to the website. And then the last thing I'm going to talk about before we go to Q&A is the blog. And this is where the blog is where I just throw out anything that happens to interest me about San Francisco trees. Once a week or so, I post on something. It could be anything. But lately, what's been filling up the blog is the chalked tree tours that we've been doing. And I'm going to take you to an example of one. So I and two other tree wonks, Jason DeWeese and Dick Turner, we've been going out for a year now, and we counted up the other day, we've done 28 of these. Every week or two, we figure out what we decide on a neighborhood. We go to the neighborhood, and for 3 hours, we walk around with chalk, and we chalk a tree tour of the neighborhood. So this is the Telegraph Hill tour. This is how they always start, with a little bit of chalk info about which way to go. We show people how to move around with these little arrows, and we create a loop. and by the time we're done, we have 50 or so trees. For each tree, we give the common name, the scientific name, and where the tree's from. And occasionally we'll add other little tidbits. If it's a small leaf tristania, we'll say this is the most commonly planted tree in San Francisco. We try to point out the native trees. A couple of trees I don't like very much, and so I'll usually tell people that. And then when we're done, the chalk fades after a week or less if it happens to be the rainy season. But once the chalk fades, we put it up on the blog. And so it's here forever with all this information and some photos. This is what we think is the largest philodendron in the city on Telegraph Hill. This was something we found along the way. Take a, book libraries around town. In Telegraph Hill, they have a rock library. Take a rock, leave a rock.
Great.
And we found this amazing tulip tree at the top of Telegraph Hill.
Wow.
Who knew? So we're always discovering new stuff. So
this is
that's
excellent.
that's the website and some of the interesting tree stuff that I've been doing. I wanted to share with everyone. So with that, I think we can turn it over to some questions.
Yeah, this is great, Mike. You know what? Thank you so much for telling us how to optimize your website, because I learned this myself in our pre-interviews that it's almost like invisible ink when you're chalking these things, and then it disappears. Then a person can go to your website and really maximize the decentralized sort of self-guided tours. So, and I love that you have it by neighborhood, and you've got sort of a tree brain trust with Jason DeWeese. I mean, such a palm expert. Oh my goodness.
Right.
So I really want to encourage that. And from what you have to say about the Salesforce tour, my understanding from one of the other interviews I heard you on was that the Salesforce tour, I think you said, is the most diversity of any trees.
Yeah, Adam Greenspan, who designed it, you hear a tree nut and you walk around the park, it just, your eyes pop out. They're trees I've never seen before in the city.
I love
it's an amazing collection. So if you haven't been up there, you really should try. And I would recommend you click on this website to see what's up there. I've also got on YouTube. If you Google Salesforce Park tree tours on YouTube, you'll get to see a 32-minute video where I walk around the park and point out what's there.
That's incredible, Mike. That's awesome. Well, I'll just take a brief second here to share an announcement. Thanks to all the newcomers that are here. Speaking of Salesforce, I want to quickly mention that Salesforce has a campaign called Trillions of Trees, for those who don't know it. And oddly enough, an author, Kurt Cyrus, will be joining us for another Zoom event on Earth Day. So if you haven't signed up, we are going to be interviewing the author himself, Kurt Cyrus, who wrote Trillions of Trees, on Thursday at 5 p.m. And you can sign up for free at our website, fuff.net/events. So that brief plug for our next Earth Day celebration. So before we get to questions, I also want to briefly let everyone know that this event tonight is sponsored generously by our partners, Arborist Now. They're a full-service professional arboreal company based in San Francisco, and they have graciously agreed to provide a $10,000 match to us here at FUF and supporting our work for the month of April only. So it's only during Earth Month that we're getting this match, and I'm happy to share with you that we are right now at $6,200 for that match. So we only have $3,800 to go to get the full maximized, optimized matching for that donation. So with that being said, our first fun prize giveaway, the first 5 people who make a first-time donation to FUF who've never given to us before will receive this handy, beautiful iFUF SF face mask that is 100% cotton, double layer, stretchy ear thing. So you can go to our website, fuff.net, and donate, and we will send out to the first 5 first-time donors one of these masks for free. Anya can post the donate link into the chat box. Thank you so much. And Allison, the event, yes, we can post the link for the event that I mentioned, Trillions of Trees. It's fuff.net/events. All right, so let's get started on the questions. Our first question tonight is from Fuff co-founder, Dr. Isabel Wade. And Mike, I think you know Isabel very well.
Wow, well, these VIPs on the call is making me nervous.
So
Hi, Mike.
Hi, Isabel.
Oh my God, this is great. So Isabel is wanting to know, Mike, are the erythrina, which is a coral tree out at India Basin on the new trail, are those erythrina? I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right. Are they erythrina trees? Are they coral trees at India Basin on the new trail? They're about 3 years old, I think. I was amazed to see them, if so, and goes to show the difference in the city's microclimate.
Well, leave it to Isabel to stump me on the very first question. So I actually haven't been out to that park to see the coral trees. I say erythrina. You say erythrina. Let's call the whole thing off. Erythrina. I don't know. I only know a few coral trees around town. There's that amazing one on Cumberland. There's another one at the corner of 20th in Wisconsin. But I haven't seen the ones out at India Basin. So that's going to be my next, it's on my bucket list.
Great. Well, we have another question for you, Mike. Thank you so much, Isabel. I feel a little bit like Larry King, may he rest in memory. What is the process through which new species of trees are first introduced to the city and available for sidewalk plantings? This comes to us from Mr. Joel. I don't know if I'm pronouncing your name correctly, Wheaton or Outen. Mike, I know you're on the board at the Bureau of Urban Forestry.
Yeah, so that's a really good question. The city allows a wide variety of trees to be planted. They have some trees that they don't allow, either because they get too big or because they're terrible sidewalk breakers. But in general, the city allows a wide variety of trees. So I think that the way that new trees have been introduced to the city has largely been through FUF. I mean, I can remember when there were no sweet shade trees around town at all. Sweet shade, incredibly fragrant tree, great smell. And the tree that everyone used for trees with fragrance was Victorian box. But the Victorian box had these seeds that are sticky and they dropped on cars. And so I remember it was FUF that introduced the sweet shade as sort of a great smelling tree that doesn't have the defects of Victorian box. And there are other examples like that around town. I think the Primrose Tree is a great tree from Australia that was extremely rare until 10, 12 years ago. So I think FUF gets my award for sort of the introductions of undeservedly rare trees.
Wow, that's really nice.
Can I enter into that conversation since I always have to have the last word? I'm Dan. It turns out that there are 50 trees that are allowed to be planted in the streets of San Francisco. Forest Council, which is part of the City Hall, and their job is to advise the mayor and the supervisors on all issues that pertain to trees. But one of the things they're responsible for is reviewing those 50 trees once a year. And through FUF and through other ways, they review the trees and they try to expand and see what other trees might work in the streets of San Francisco. So if you ever have a suggestion, I would send it to the Urban Forest Council. And I don't know what that, just look it up on the web, Urban Forest Council. We're part of the Department of the Environment, and put your note in, and then we'll consider it as a possible tree. But you also know we can't plant fruit trees in the streets of San Francisco either, because they drop the fruit, people slip and fall, and then the city gets sued for that. So. And
then you need a lawyer.
Yes.
I should have mentioned Mike is a little bit like Batman. He's a venture capitalist lawyer by day and a tree preserver enthusiast tour guide by night.
So, my superhero uniform.
Yeah, you're like the Batman of trees, Mike. And in fact, I did hear that you used some of your legal skills to write an easement for a native tree in Lone Mountain. Is that true?
That is true. It's just one of the. I'm not stumped on this question. So this was back. Actually, I can't remember. I think it was in the 90s. A California buckeye tree over by USF, huge tree, probably there before the Victorian house that was next to it. Was there, but the property owner was going to subdivide the lot and build a second building very close to the tree, and it was way too close. The second building would have probably killed the tree, or certainly would have damaged it, and it would have looked awful afterwards. So there was, as you'd expect, there was an outcry among the neighbors and tree lovers in San Francisco, and after some months of back and forth and fighting, the property owner agreed to move the building to another part of the lot, saving the tree, and agreed to enter into what at that time was the only easement protecting a tree in San Francisco, and gave Friends of the Urban Forest the easement to protect the tree from removal or damage. And I actually, a real estate lawyer at my firm at the time, with my guidance, wrote the easement, and I think I still have it in a file somewhere. And if you ever need the original.
I have the file. I have it in my files, and I drive by it all the time. It's on McAllister, and I really urge everyone to go buy it. It is a beautiful tree.
An expansive buckeye. I mean, it looks like 3 trees.
Willard Street North and McAllister. It's worth a visit.
Thank you. Okay. Question from Dina Emerson. What are the trees in bloom now all over SF neighborhoods with pom-pom pink flowers? And then she writes in parentheses, not cherry blossoms.
Actually, they are cherry blossoms. Those blossoms that you see are Kwanzan, the Prunus cerulata. They're flowering cherries, and most of the ones you see are the Kwanzan variety. They have double flowers, which is why they look like pom-poms. And this is the season for them. The plums were in February, and the cherries are in April.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much. We have a question from board member Gina. Hi, Gina. She says, I see Melaleuca trees all around San Francisco quite a bit, the ones with the squishy bark. Are those good street trees, or are they now not good ones to plant anymore?
Well, good question. Hi, Gina. I think the Melaleuca is one of the few trees that does well out on the west side of the city. They are pretty good in handling wind, and they thrive in San Francisco. So I'm a fan. I know there are some trees that I'm a fan of that the Bureau of Urban Forestry is not a fan of for various reasons. It's expensive to keep up really large trees and trees that are maybe sidewalk breakers. But I think it should definitely be part of the palette of trees that we have in San Francisco. And the reason for that is, and I've said this many times, the reason we have such an unusual palette of trees in San Francisco is that we have to self-select for a whole bunch of things. Trees that do well here have to be able to handle our Mediterranean climate without any rain for most of the year. They have to be able to handle sand underneath 2/3 of the city. The wind, this is the windy city. Chicago has nothing on us when it comes to wind. And then sidewalk cuts. My favorite tree growing up was the sugar maple, but a sugar maple can't handle the sidewalk compaction. So when you self-select for all those things, you get a fairly small list of trees that do really well, and Melaleuca, I think, is one of them. So I'd keep it on the list.
Only the strong survive here in San Francisco. Boy, isn't that the truth? Yeah, so we have that crazy climate that is, I've heard it referred to in some circles as a maritime foggy desert. That is only similar to a few places on the planet. I think South Africa, of course, Australia, New Zealand, and I guess possibly in Asia, right? There's some places there.
Well, I think the Mediterranean regions are Southwest Africa, Southwest Australia, near Perth, and also South Australia, a little bit further around the continent, South Africa, the area around Cape Town, the Mediterranean, of course, and California, and then the last one is Chile. So that's why we have so many trees from those places. We have a lot of Chilean trees. We have a ton of Australian trees. And ironically, it's the San Francisco natives that are the toughest to put on the streets of San Francisco. There are trees that do very well in our parks or in open spaces, but the Monterey cypress does not make a good street tree in San Francisco. They just get too big.
Yeah, well, that's great. I love your top 10 list on your website. I live in Upper Haight. I know you live in Coal Valley, and I love the number one. I'll leave it as a mystery. People can go to the website and check it out. But the number one landmark tree that it's subjective, according to Mike, is an incredible specimen, and it's not in a sidewalk. So I encourage everyone to go check it out. Here's a really good question from Julia. How has SF's urban canopy changed over the past few decades?
Another good question. I love the content that FUF puts out, where they will show Page Street in 1962 and then Page Street in 2021. And on the left, you see a black and white photo that is with no trees at all, and on the right, you see a beautiful tree-lined street. So if you go back to the 40s and the 50s and the early 60s, until Isabel Wade came along, there were almost no trees at all in the streets. And I wasn't living in San Francisco at this time, but I think what happened then was the environmental movement took over, and planting trees was part of that movement. And the city at that time was planting trees. And just from looking around at what's mature and it looks like a 50-year-old tree, they had a pretty limited list of trees. They planted ficus, they planted myoporum, they planted a few other trees, and what they wanted were trees that grew fast and thrived. And then there was a big budget cut in I think 1980, and it was crushing to tree lovers in San Francisco to have the city stop planting trees. And so Isabel Wade and some others at the time leapt in and got Friends of the Urban Forest started to fill the gap, and began a history of tree planting, which has continued to this day. If you want to see the very first tree that was ever planted by FUF, go to 24th Street near Diamond. It's still there. It's a glossy privet. Glossy privets are hardy trees, and that tree is still there. And at that point, I think the trees, San Francisco has always allowed homeowners a lot of latitude to plant what they want. And so one of the things I love about San Francisco's urban forest is that there's just, every time you walk around a corner, you see something different. And what's the word? There's a word that's with a P. I'm spacing on it, but
Progress?
that is one that applies as well. But I love the fact that when you walk down any street in San Francisco, you never know what you're going to see. And that's part of, sorry?
A plethora of trees?
It'll come to me later, and maybe it doesn't start with a P. That's usually how my memory works. And that's continued to this day. So there are certainly some neighborhoods that have more of one thing than another, just because of what thrives. But the urban forest that we have now is kind of resident driven, and I love that. I would never want to have San Francisco be a place where you can only see jacarandas on 18th Street and Potrero Hill, and you can only see melaleucas in the Sunset or the Richmond.
Thank you so much.
And can I interrupt again? If I urge everyone, go to your computer and Google bullet tree car chase. And it's a very famous car chase, 1968 movie. And someone has just gotten 7 minutes of the car chase, and it goes all over the city. And what's fascinating is there are no trees. And it geographically makes no sense whatsoever. They're popping around all over the city, but then you get a real look that in 1968, there were very, very few trees on the streets.
Isn't that a Clint Eastwood movie?
Yep.
Yeah, and they
Great.
come off the 280 right in Potrero Hill at Mariposa, and you can see that it's stark. There's nothing there. Well, so Mike and Dan, thank you, Mike. That is so interesting, and thanks for mentioning that we are started by community residents, and it is true. Dr. Isabel Wade, who thank you so much for joining us, with help from Isabel. FUF got started, and now we are 60,000 trees in. So that is roughly half of the total urban canopy of San Francisco. So it's really remarkable. And we are approaching, actually, next month, our 40-year anniversary. So you'll be hearing more about that too. One more question, then we're going to stop for a little break, another announcement. This is a great question. What are San Francisco's top 3 tree species? This comes from Cyrus Patel. What are SF's top 3 species that are in existence in the ground? And what are the top 3 species that are being newly planted these days, if you happen to know?
I think I can get pretty close. So the most common, we have a census that was taken in 2017 of street trees in San Francisco. And I know from memory, the most common street tree in San Francisco is the London plane. And I think that in the next 2, I think in the top 3 are also ficus and maybe the New Zealand Christmas tree. And the ficus is just not planted anymore, but you go back 20, 30, 40 years and it was probably the most common tree in the city. And London planes are one of the most successful urban trees in the world, at least in the Northern Hemisphere. They don't do as well here as they do in London and Paris and New York, but they're still a great tree. So those are the most common trees. The most frequently planted trees, that changes a little bit every year. I know the small leaf Tristania is definitely number 1. And if you'd asked me this question 2 or 3 years ago, I would have said that the Marina strawberry tree was number 2. I think that's fallen out of favor a little bit because we started to see it get hit with pests. And Dan, you actually might know the next most common trees.
Let's ask Zema.
I was just about to say, I could literally answer that for you. The next 2 are Lophostomen convertus, also known as the Brisbane box, followed by the Magnolia grandifolia, St. Mary. So just a southern magnolia, but a different variety.
All right.
Thank
Those
you.
are all good, well adapted to San Francisco trees.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, that's awesome, Zema. Thank you so much. All righty, it is 5:32. We are going to have a quick announcement. This is also for those of you who love tree tours, and I know that because of the pandemic, a lot of us have been spending more time outside. So with the help of Mike Sullivan, we are excited. We're very, very, very honored to announce a new type of tree tour that we've never done before. I'm just going to briefly share my screen. Oh, Zoom.
Should I stop? I'll stop sharing mine.
That would be great. That would be great. So if you guys can see, this is a brand new self-guided tree tour that FUF is announcing. It's free. And Anya's going to post the link in the chat box. Basically, we used to do lots of tree tours in person. And because of the pandemic, we were inspired to put these amazing tree tours online. So using this software, youraudiotour.com, which is available on your phone as well. It's not an app, but it's a web-based software. You can visit the first FUF tree that Mike mentioned, which is 24th and Diamond. These are trees that are in Mike's book, some of them, but some of them are brand new. And so we have over 20 trees. This is 22 trees, actually. It's about an hour. I've taken the tour myself. There's so many wonderful trees to look at, and even a champion. So Mike, can you briefly tell us what makes a city champion tree?
Yeah, it's the biggest of its kind in San Francisco, at least the ones that I know of. And there aren't many that I don't know of if they're that big.
That's awesome. So yeah, do you use a laser to decide how big it is?
No, I know it when I see it. I know it when I see it.
There's another quote you said, right, about pornography. I know it when I see it, right? That's famous.
Yeah, that was a Supreme Court justice who, when asked what's the definition of pornography, said, "I know it when I see it."
Okay. Well, this is exciting for us because we are offering this to all of you for free. Noe Valley Tour is the one that includes the first tree that Puff ever planted. And then there's an amazing Coal Valley Tour, which is the community that Mike has called home for several decades. Both tours are incredible, and the Coal Valley Tour even includes a little bit about the Grateful Dead. There's a practice space there that the Grateful Dead rehearsed at back in the day. And I'm very excited to announce that we are going to be giving away an awesome swag bag full of Puff memorabilia, including a pin, a sticker, a t-shirt, a sweatshirt, and some other goodies in a Puff tote bag. Let me show you what it looks like. It's an awesome tote bag with a zipper with all these goodies, including a Puff hat. I won't put all of it on. Puff hat and this hoodie. Oh my gosh, who doesn't want a Puff hoodie? But here's what you have to do to win it. So it'll be the first person to post on Instagram a selfie of themselves in front of the first Puff tour that was the first Puff tree that was planted 40 years ago. So you have to take the Noe Valley Tour to know which tree that is. And the second swag bag will go to the first person who posts themselves in front of a city champion tree. So again, the biggest of its kind. So thank you, everyone. And thank you, Anya, for posting the links to both tours in our chat box. All right.
And I'm disqualified. I won't enter that. I won't try.
No, but we are going to be doing some more swag with Mike's amazing book. So stick around for trivia that's coming up right now. I want to mention your book because it is amazing. There's two versions, so make sure this is the old version that I got back in the day before I started working at Puff. This is the new version. It belongs to Dan Flanagan, and we have 5 copies to give away. And here's what you need to do to win the book. You need to be the first person to answer the question correctly in the chat box for the trivia questions. And Anya will be helping me decipher who the first person is. These are all non-Googleable, so no cheating, no Googling. And they are signed copies of the book. Thank you, Mike. All right, so let's just briefly start. I want to start things off with a non-trivia question just to get people warmed up, okay? So Mike, there's a Japanese word, Shinrin-yoku. Are you familiar with this word?
I am not familiar with that word.
Okay, I'm probably mispronouncing it, but it means it's forest bathing. And from what I understand, the Japanese have a lot of words for trees that don't translate very well to English, or we just don't have the word for. So if you could concoct a word to describe any aspect of a tree, what might it be and what part of the tree would it describe?
If I could concoct a word to describe a tree, what would it be?
To describe any aspect of a tree, like how it makes you feel or a certain part of a tree.
It would be canopy. I love tree canopies.
Okay.
So I would come up with a word to mean canopy in Japanese.
Okay, I love it. I love it. Okay, so everyone, we have 10 tree trivia questions. We're going to do this quickly. It's going to be a rapid fire, and then we'll pop in for a good 15 minutes of more Ask Mike Anything questions. So get your questions ready for the second Q&A, but right now, trivia time. All right. Where, Mike Sullivan, and I'm going to say hold off on answering this, Mike Sullivan, for 10 seconds while we give everyone a chance to populate the chat box. This is a good one. Where is San Francisco's old growth forest located? Oh, this is a hard one. I am waiting for answers. Gotta be specific. Golden Gate Park is not specific enough. Where in Golden Gate Park?
Like, are you having success with that thing?
Yeah.
Right.
This tool's tangled.
Yeah, I feel like I want one.
These are all very good answers. Woodland. I'm waiting for yes. All right, we might have a winner here. RP, I think, might be the winner. Oh, sorry, Sunny. I think Sunny is the winner. So Mike, what is the answer to that question?
I think the answer is the northeast corner of Golden Gate Park, the Oak Woodlands. That'd be my guess.
Yes, behind the Conservatory of Flowers, Oak Woodlands. All right. So I think Sunny's the winner. Anya is going to ask you for your address, and you are the winner of the Trees of San Francisco signed book by Mike Sullivan, number 1. All right, question number 2. Again, Mike, I'm gonna ask you to pause for 10 seconds. This is sort of a tricky question. Okay, many people lament that we don't plant edible trees on the streets of San Francisco. Can you name 2 street trees that actually do produce edible fruits, even if they are not delicious? They are still edible. Remember, these are trees you might commonly find planted on a sidewalk. Oh boy, here comes the chat.
I think you might stump me to come up with 2.
I think that's a fig.
I got the answer from your book. Okay, we've got so many answers, it's crazy. Oh, Mark Svenby, I think is the one. Oh, maybe Sarah B. Oh, this is good. I think Sarah B is the winner. Okay, Mike, what's your answer?
All right. Well, one of them for sure is the strawberry tree, either the Marina variety or the European one. And I'm going to say that the loquat is the second.
Yes.
Japanese loquat.
Loquat. And Sarah B said crabapple, which it does make. Crabapple is edible but not delicious. Purple leaf plum often gets pollinated and makes those things that look like plums. Yes. I also found avocado and California pepper tree from your book. Pink peppercorns.
So the loquat, the Japanese loquat, isn't often planted on the streets, but it's delicious. It's actually, humans like to eat that. The bronze loquat, which is very common on the streets, is not something that humans think tastes good, but the parrots love it. I was walking my dog on Schrader Street the other day, and I heard like 15 parrots in a tree, and I looked up, and it was like rain, the loquat seeds hitting the ground and hitting cars. So if you want parrots, plant a bronze loquat.
And I found it very amusing, incredibly interesting that you are not against guerrilla grafting, Mike.
You didn't hear it here.
Yes, we won't talk.
Yeah.
That's a little bit too controversial for this AMA. All right, question number 3. Which of your tours, Mike, and again, give us 10 seconds so that people can answer. This is a tough one. Which of your tree tours has the most diversity of trees? That's a tough one. This is also a little subjective. So Anya, the winner of question number 2 was Sarah P or B, I forget, but Sarah was the winner. Thank you. Salesforce, people are saying Salesforce Park, because we talked about that earlier. Lots of people have different questions. What is your answer, Mike Sullivan?
So this has to be from the book? Is that the question?
Which of your tree tours?
Oh, okay. All right. Well, I'm going to go with Salesforce then.
Yeah.
Salesforce Park. That's my answer.
All right, Salesforce Park. So the first person to answer that was RP. All right, you've just won the 3rd copy of 5 of the books. All right, question number 4. This is a little less subjective. All right, Mike, give us a good 10 seconds here to get going. Which tree has distinctive cracked charcoal colored bark? Let's see who's got this one. Charcoal colored bark. Pear. Oh my goodness. Good old Warren and Gina. Gina. Oh, sorry, I didn't give Mike a chance to answer. I
Yeah,
got
I'm
too
not-
excited.
I'm not stumped on this one. This is the evergreen pear, Pyrus kawakami.
Thank you.
Kawakami, I suppose.
Pyrus Kawakamiya.
Yeah.
That's great. Well, Gina, you were the winner, and book number 4 goes to you. All right. Oh, Joel, she says Joel got it. Oh my gosh.
It's like the Academy Awards a couple of years ago where they misannounced the winner.
Yeah, I
We're
gotta
very sorry.
I gotta take some deep breaths. I got too excited. Okay, so the 5th and final copy of Mike's book, and I will pause and let everyone try to get this one. What is the name used to describe the prominent raised markings on the bark of the prunus family or cherry trees? Da, da, da. I feel like Jeopardy.
This thing actually makes some good sense.
Okay. And looks like people are starting to answer. We have a winner. Mike, what's the answer?
I think you're taking these from the book and you're assuming that I remember everything that I wrote in the book, which is not always true. But I think I know the answer to this one. I think they're called lenticels.
Yes, you are correct. Lenticels, and the winner, Cyrus, you get a signed copy of Mike's amazing book, the 5th and final copy. So,
Phew.
yeah.
It's tougher than I thought.
Okay, that was pretty good, Mike. I'm impressed. We have five more quick trivia questions. Are you up for it?
I'm up for it.
Okay, these will not be getting books as prizes, but we still hope you will enter your answer in the chat box. All right, which tree has a signature citrus scent similar to orange blossoms? Question number 6. Anyone? This is which tree has the signature citrus scent similar to orange blossoms? This is a very popular San Francisco street tree. All right. And Mike, do you know the answer to that?
I do. I think you're talking about the Victorian box, Pittosporum undulatum.
Yes.
There is another Pittosporum that is not often a street tree, but has even better fragrance and even closer to orange blossom, and that's Pittosporum tobira, Tobira. So watch for those and sniff them if you can.
If we can reach them, right? That's great. Well, Julia was the winner for that. Thank you so much, Julia. No prize today, but next time, hopefully. All right, so 7, on page 46 of your book, Mike, you give a top 20 listing of the trees most planted in San Francisco and their country of origin. Can you, yes, and Mike, name a native tree that hails from the USA that is in the top 10? Oh my gosh, before I even finish the question. Amazing. What's the answer, Mike?
From the USA, well, magnolia is definitely in the USA, so I'd say that's in the top 10.
That is correct.
How'd I do?
That's the only one in the USA. Magnolia grandiflora. Thank you so much.
The state tree of Mississippi. Who knew that?
Wow, I did not know that. That's great. Thank you so much, Ellen. That was perfect. So 8, what is the common name for the ginkgo tree? Anyone answer this for fun? Put your answer in the chat box. Oh, so many people know it. What's the answer to that, Mike?
Well, I'm gonna say the common name for the ginkgo tree is ginkgo because nobody says maidenhair tree that I know of. But maidenhair is probably the name you're looking for. The
Maidenhair I was looking for. Thank you. But you're right. Ginkgo is the common. But I love maidenhair. That's great. Oh, this one I got from one of your tours, Mike. So I know you know the answer to this one, but let's see if other people happen to know. What tree has bark that appears like puzzle pieces and sheds in patches? Ah, many people know this one as well. What's the answer to this, Mike?
Yeah, the Chinese elm. It's
Yes.
such a cool thing. They come right off just like puzzle pieces.
Very cool. I love that was one of my big moments on one of your tours. I loved it. Okay, so final question, Mike, and thanks everyone for participating. This is great. What is the landscaping term that describes the type of pruning applied to sycamore or London plane trees that we see, for example, at the Civic Center here in San Francisco? Oh my gosh, so many smart people in this group. I'm gonna have to up my trivia questions. Okay, Mike, what's the answer?
So on my website, I give people my email address. So I get a bunch of questions that are, sent in randomly to the tree guy. And a lot of them are repetitive. And this is the number one question. What is that tree down? I see them on Civic Center and they've got these knobby ends. So that's called pollarding. Those trees have been pollarded. It's a matter of taste as to whether you like it or not, but it doesn't hurt the tree. And some people think it makes for an aesthetic thing.
It is very interesting and slightly peculiar. I'd never seen it where I grew up in St. Louis. Okay, bonus question again from your book. This was so educational for me, but everyone else, I think you'll appreciate the bonus round. What is the name of the woman of African-American descent who planted the eucalyptus trees or blue gums at 1661 Octavia at Bush in Pacific Heights? Let's see if anybody knows the answer to that question straight from Mike's book and a piece of our local history. Fascinating woman. She is, nobody knows the answer to this one. Not Maya
Wow.
Angelou. Oh, Sharon knows and Julia knows. All right, Mike, who is it?
Okay, a former slave, Mary Ellen Pleasant. And there's a beautiful plaque in the sidewalk on Octavia Street between Sutter and Goff, and it's in the Pacific Heights tour of the book. It's a great tree.
Wonderful. I love that. I love that part of your book. Okay, everyone, we're going to toggle into the final portion of the Ask Mike Anything now. So we have a few unanswered questions from before. I'm going to scroll. Thank you, everyone, for being here today. And I just want to make a quick mention that oh, here's a great question from Robert Cabrera. Robert says, I'm working with some schools in South San Francisco who are wanting shade trees for the kids. Do you have any species you can recommend for our area in South San Francisco? Thank you, Robert.
That is a good question. So for a shade tree, you probably want an evergreen tree, I would think, so that otherwise you'd be losing the shade half the year. Well, I think Brisbane box is a great tree for San Francisco, and I think South San Francisco as well. It gets to be decently large. I'd pick that if you want a tree that's fast growing, and if you want a smaller tree that will grow more slowly than the small leaf Tristania. I'm sure other people have other ideas, but those are things that come to mind.
Great. I love that. Thank you. This question comes to you, Mike, from Julia. Is there a collective term for all the trees with flowers such as gum, New Zealand Christmas tree, and bottle brush? Well, I think she means the ones that look like actual bottle brushes.
Yes. Well, those trees are all in the myrtle family, Myrtle. And I think all or almost all the myrtles are from Australia. There may be some that straggle into other places. But all those trees have flowers where you're not actually seeing the petals, you're seeing the stamens, the male part of the flower that has the anther with the pollen on the end. And those stamens, when they're kind of grouped together, are kind of visibly appealing. And when you see the bottle brush flowers, there are two types of bottle brush that we have in San Francisco that are popular for that reason, for their really beautiful red flowers. The New Zealand Christmas tree is another tree that's planted for its bottle brushy flowers, also in the myrtle family. So those flowers that you're seeing, they're probably myrtles.
Awesome, Mike. And I have to pop in here because on the Cole Valley tour, I did get to see the New Zealand tree, one of your top favorites that is going to be blooming in June. Can you tell us a little bit about what you have planned in June with that tree?
Yeah, so as I said, we've been doing these chalk tree tours since last April. We're just about to come up on our 1-year anniversary, and we've done 28 of them so far. And I've been saving the Cole Valley tour for June because the New Zealand Christmas tree at 1221 Stanion Street at the corner of 17th and Stanion is in full bloom at that time. And it is so there are probably 2,000 of these New Zealand Christmas trees around San Francisco streets. Like I said, it's one of the most popular trees in the city. And the ones on the streets, they all bloom red, except for this tree, which blooms yellow. This was a natural mutation on a tiny island off of the North Island of New Zealand in 1940. It just spontaneously bloomed yellow. And there were, 9 people around the world who were interested in that. And one of them happened to be Victor Ryder, who was San Francisco's most famous plant guy for decades. He lived on the west side of Stanion Street in Cole Valley. So he got one of them from somebody who was traveling in New Zealand, and he cultivated it. He gave a copy to Stribing. So you can see another one at the entrance to Stribing, the San Francisco Botanical Garden, just as you walk past the gates on the left. But the very first one, he plopped in the ground outside his family's property at the corner of 17th and Stanion, and it's still there. It's still there all these years later. So it's just a beautiful tree, even if it didn't have this interesting history. So I'd say it's a beautiful mutant with a nice history.
That's such a fascinating story, and so centrally located that I hope everyone can get a chance to get out there and check out that tree in June, especially when you do the tour. What a great opportunity to interact with that tree. It's really striking. And Radhika says, what's the name of the tree again? Please, it's the New Zealand Christmas tree, right?
That's right. Metrosideros. I can never remember if it's Excelsus or Excelsa. So
Zema might know. Zema
Yeah.
or Dan. This is awesome. I do, and Gina has another question. Is pilaring actually bad for the tree?
It's not harmful to the tree. In fact, that's why it can succeed. It's why it works, because you can do it year after year and cut the knobs off, cut the branches off after the trees drop. So it's not harmful for the tree. It was done, I think, originally, if you go way back, I think it was in France when it was first invented. It was done, I think, to get the sticks that respond to the pollinating. There was some commercial reason for that. So there was a reason for it early on when it was first done, but it doesn't harm the tree.
But wait a second, I give a caveat here. In the city, it's only allowed on London plane trees. You can't do it on other trees. Because
That's a good point, Dan.
Because
don't
don't
try this on a Brisbane box.
Because what happens is the London plane, when you do this, when it reestablishes the new growth, it's still solid to the tree. Where if you do it in other trees, the new growth is not solid and it tends to drop. So pollinating only works in the city on London plains.
I'm glad you pointed that out, Dan. We definitely don't want that tour being done on other trees.
Oh my goodness. Well, that is so amazing. I don't know if I like the knuckle look or not. It does give San Francisco a special look, because that's what they did in Golden Gate Park too, between the
Actually, in Paris, it's really cool because when they prune them, they do it sometimes in the small, they do it also, do it on chestnut trees there too. And all the chestnut, they're just do it as a flower, and they're really beautiful. All the flowering branches are on the ground, and it's really kind of cool to see.
So I actually, on my list of landmark trees, I have landmarked the best pollarded London plane as well.
Oh.
And so I can tell you it's at 426 Urbano Drive in the Ingleside Terrace neighborhood. That's that neighborhood with the big circular street where I think they used to do races.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So 426 Urbano Street, go see a couple of really amazing pollarded London planes.
And we really have some tree lovers, amazing in our group here. Yvette hi, Yvette. She's also a FUF board member. She says livestock feed was another original reason for pilarding. And Allison, hi, Allison. She says that it was popular in France. And so we wanted to imitate the French aesthetic. Thank you. Yes. Well, everyone, I want to wrap things up and say thank you so much, first and foremost, Mike Sullivan, for joining us for this Ask Mike Anything event and all of your expertise as we celebrate the urban canopy here in San Francisco.
Thank you, Mike.
It was really fun. I'm glad I was only stumped once, but if you could be stumped only once and it was by Isabel Wade, that's I'm doing pretty well.
That's great. And everyone, I just want to say it was a pleasure to have everyone here. Please join us for the Trillions of Trees book event, 1 hour, 5 p.m. on Earth Day, Thursday, where we're going to be talking to the author of Trillions of Trees, Kurt Cyrus. And please remember, if you can, to give generously to FUF this time of year. We're on track to plant 1,104 trees, and that will be even made more possible with your donation, which is going to be doubled by arborists now. So thanks to them for sponsoring tonight's event. Thanks to all of our FUF staffers who are here, Zema, Dan, Roberta, Anya, I think maybe Kiva's here, and of course the illustrious Dr. Who? And,
Jesus, I think, is here too.
Oh, and Jesus. And we're going to end right on time at 6, everyone. Thank you again, and have a wonderful evening.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.